Hello everyone, my name's Tim from Welcome to the Table, and today we are once again in my car to listen to me ramble about things. Today I want to talk about Twilight Imperium. If you don't know what it is, Twilight Imperium is a huge, massive space opera game created by Fantasy Flight. This is a game that you'll have heard, if you're into the board gaming scene, you'll probably have heard of this game just off of rumors from people that have played it. Playing, 10 hour game rounds of this game, or abandoning it at 2 a.m. because it just hasn't ended yet. The version I have the most exposure to is 3rd edition, although now there is a 4th edition. The first couple of editions were a lot less. Well, you probably, if you want to look into this, look up the first couple of editions compared to the 3rd edition, and you'll see why I chuckle a little bit, because the art has improved so much, the component quality has improved so much, and even by the 3rd edition, the game has improved a lot. Like I said, they have made a 4th edition that just came out last year, maybe, very recently. And that does improve the game, or change the game, a fair bit, again. But yes, 3rd edition is the one that I have the most exposure to. I want to talk about today some of the things this game does well, some of the games it doesn't do that well, what you get in the box, what you should expect going in, that kind of thing. But first, what is it? Well, Twilight Imperium is a big box war game at its heart, but it's also kind of not. So, it basically simulates galactic politics in a time where the galaxy was ruled by the Lazak Empire, but there's been a coup, and the rulers of the galaxy have been wiped out, and now there's a power vacuum, and all of the other races are scrambling to take control of different regions of space and working towards becoming the rulers. It's a game that plays on a hex grid of planet systems. The center of the map is always the former capital of the Empire, Mechatol Rex. Each player will be playing a different alien race with their own powers, their own starting units and technology. There is, a randomized map every time. Well, there can be a randomized map, though if you want something a bit more balanced and fair, you end up looking up the some template maps to use. And it's basically a giant toy box. There are dozens of modules, optional modules that you can use if you want to. There's 2 big box expansions that add more races, more things to the game. They add a new way of playing the game with a scenario for the fall of the Empire, with a faction unique to that, the Lazaks themselves. And yeah, there's just so much much content here that you can customize this game however you wish every time you play it. And that's kind of the big draw, one of the big draws to this game. It is a war game. There are dudes on the board with ships, different types of ships. You've got, fighters, destroyers, cruisers, carriers, dreadnoughts, flagships, war suns, and then ground troops, mechanized troops, space docks, planetary defense systems. There's leaders, there's space mines, there's representatives for the political scene, because this game does actually have a phase dedicated to just politics, where everyone around the table collectively votes on one-off effects or laws that are permanent for the rest of the game. There's dozens of different modules that you can add in. And that is something it does really well, is that you can customize this game to a ridiculous extent. You can use everything. You can use none of it. You can use just what's in the base game. You can pick and choose. And the game allows you to do that. What's the good? How does it work? Well, it works by being a simulation. Not of a war. It works by being a simulation of galactic politics, where you'll have your goals. Everyone else will have the same goals, but you'll have maybe a secret goal. You'll have things that your faction is good at. They'll have things their faction is good at. There's territory on the map that you'll be fighting over, some more valuable than others. And it lets you play. And it does that really well. If you want to, you can play the game without actually being the selfish and conniving person trying to win the game. Because if you are that person, maybe you piss people off around the table and they decide, no, you're not winning. No, you've been too much of a dick. Not going to let you have that. And the game just lets you do that. It's not really a war game. You're all kind of living in this galaxy. And it's up to you how you want to play it. And it does that really well. Another thing that it does really well is, you've heard me mention this before with Risk, where if it's not your turn, you're sitting there waiting, not being involved in what's going on at the table. In Twilight Imperium, there's something that they add. They added something called strategy cards. There's these big hexagonal, heavy cardstock cards. And what these represent are different phases. At the start of every round, you all pick one of these. If you're playing with 4, you pick 2. Because there's 8 of them. They each have a number. And the lowest value of the one that you pick goes first. So it determines turn order. And they each are a different phase that everyone gets involved in. And before you can pass, so you'll have a number of actions during the round, a number of turns. Before you can pass and stop doing anything for that round, you have to use this strategy card. And this is kind of the important thing, is these strategy cards are all phases that everyone gets involved in at the table, whether it's the technology strategy card, allowing you all to research technology and work your way through, in the case of 3rd edition, the technology tree, or spiderweb, if you want to call it. If you've seen a picture of TI3's tech tree, it is just a mess of a thing. Or you've got what are some of them? There's the politics phase itself. That is one of these strategy cards in 3rd edition. There's production, where everyone gets to build units. There's diplomacy, where you run into things like demilitarized zones. You can make a region of space a demilitarized zone, and no one else is allowed to activate it. There's warfare, where everyone gets really nervous whenever you activate it, because it means probably someone's gonna get attacked. There's trade. Oh yeah, trade is a thing in this game. Every race has got 2 trade contracts that have a certain value of them that do nothing for you. And how trade works is, if you and someone else will swap trade contracts. And whenever someone triggers trade, you get a number of trade goods, these universal currency, equal to the value of your trade contract. So if you're a race like the Emirates of Akan, that are the Space Lion merchant lords of Twilight Imperium, your trade contracts are incredibly valuable, and everyone wants to be your friend for that. And then it becomes up to you how you want to do that. But there's also whoever activates trade becomes the trade master and has to agree to every trade happening. So if you want, as the trade master, you could be a dick and say, all right, I want the most valuable trade agreement, and then no one else is allowed to trade. And the people at the table will hate you for that, and will probably try and mess with you during the game, because, again, the game lets you do that. And this fact is extremely important, that these things exist, because it means that, for the most part during a round, you're going to be doing your action, which, unless you're building, doesn't take that long. You move troops, you take over a planet, or you fight someone, and that can take a little while, because combat is a bit archaic with 10-sided dice, but it's not that bad. It is a nice. I've heard it described before as complicated a game as Twilight Imperium is, having the combat be a straight up roll a die. If you hit a number, you do a damage thing. Is a nice break from all the scheming and strategizing and thinking that you'd otherwise have to do, and it lets everybody sit back and enjoy the spectacle, which is an interesting way of thinking about it. It's not something I had thought about before, and it does make a lot of sense that way. They don't overly complicate combat. But then, so on your turn, you'll be going through doing, a minor thing, and then a minor thing, and then a minor thing, and then, someone triggers trade, or someone triggers technology, and everyone's interested. And that's great. It keeps the flow of the game going. It keeps you engaged outside of your own turn. And it allows, bargaining and threatening and all that kind of stuff of, things like, you have the trade card, I have that technology card, you want me to play technology after you play trade, so you have enough money to buy a research a tech that you really want, but I already have the money that I need for mine, so maybe I don't care when it happens. Maybe I trigger it early, or maybe I have others, I want it early so I can do other things. And then you're asking me, well, what is it worth to you to not trigger tech right away? Can I give you trade goods? Can I do this? Can I do this? And you bargain and you bicker, and maybe I do wait, or maybe I don't, and I pissed you off more. And the game lets you do that. The game lets you play. The game lets you be you. Which in a heavy bloated war game like this is great. But there's a problem with Twilight Imperium beyond the game length. And the problem is, with so many moving parts, so many interlocking systems, there are some things that aren't balanced, some things that aren't quite fair, and some things that don't quite work. There's a tech that got added in to the tech tree in one of the expansions, transfabrication, that is only ever useful to one faction, and even then, it's not really that big of a deal to have or not have. And that's a bit annoying. Like most of the other techs do, like almost all of the other techs do interesting things. They're all worth having. But then you have transfabrication that like kind of doesn't do anything. So then there can be situations where one person gets a free tech chosen by another person, and they're just going to give them transfab because that's just it's a useless thing. It doesn't benefit them at all. So there's a problem there, and it's caused people to basically revamp the whole thing in terms of house rules. And house rules are a very interesting thing for board games. I don't generally use house rules, just because I feel like you should play the game how it was designed. But there are two games that I use house rules in. One is Shadowhunters, though that is a relatively recent thing. We do touch about that in the video that I made. And the other is Twilight Imperium. And we use house rules in Twilight Imperium just to smooth out the edges a bit, make some things worth doing, make certain strategies more worth doing, make certain units more worth having. And that's all well and good if you're playing with the same group of people, but if you're playing with a different group of people than you usually do, and you have a different set of house rules, or they're not familiar with the house rules they use, and they play with regular rules, it can cause problems. I only ever really play Twilight Imperium with the same group of people, so we use the same rule set every time. We've got a thing posted so that people can refresh themselves. The other problem with and that is a problem, but you kind of expect stuff like that going into a game that can take. Our longest game of Twilight Imperium was about 16 hours. We played it over the weekend, started Friday night, and got it until I think it finished 10 a.m. Sunday, something like that. You're kind of expecting some bullshit in a game like that. The other problem with Twilight Imperium, and this is more of a problem, this is one that has actually caused me a lot of headaches in the past, being the one that owns Twilight Imperium, being the one that generally is the person that teaches people board games, and that is, it is so complicated, and there's so much little finicky rules to learn that we basically have to do a crash course on it before every time we play, because we only get to play once a year usually. We try and play it at least once a year. And we basically have to give everyone a crash course. I say we. There's myself and a friend of mine that have both played Twilight Imperium before we bought it for this particular group. And so it was kind of the two of us. But it also means that, so we have to give a crash course, a refresher on how all the bits and pieces work and how all the house rules work, because you can look up the rulebooks online. Fantasy Flight was actually really good about that and put PDFs for the base game and the two expansions online, so you can look that stuff online and read it up on your own time, which I would highly recommend. If you're getting people to play Twilight Imperium, have them go through the rules, but make it clear what rules you're using, what stuff you're not using, that kind of stuff. Because it can smooth out that side of the game. But the other thing that it means is during the game, people forget rules. You miss things, or they're asking questions all the time, or there's rule conflicts, and you're having to go through the rulebook all the time to look up how to answer some of these questions. And if you don't know the game by rote, which you won't, then it's gonna be difficult. And reminding people about the text that they've got, because there's not really an easy way to do that. The tech tree is a page in the manual. The texts themselves are represented by a deck of cards. The deck of cards is about that thick. It's these little small cards that's about that thick. And by the end of the game, if you've got, 8, 9, 10, you just got a huge stack in front of you. Like, the game takes up so much space as it is. So trying to lay out everything so you have all the information in front of you at once takes more space than most people are capable of having. The table space, I mean. Lord knows we don't have enough. There's been points where we've used like side tables for the objectives and stuff like that, just to have more space on the main board and the main table. And people miss things. People miss, oh, you have +1 on these guys because of this tech that you've got, and oh, but then we already finished a round of combat. Would that really, you run into problems like that. And then, yeah, rule conflicts and things like that. The game, as awesome as the game is, and don't get me wrong, as much as I complain about it because I love it. It is an amazing game. It is amazing. But it is a huge headache to run because there's so many moving parts. Now, one thing I should say is, as long as the game there is player elimination. You can get wiped out and knocked out of the game. This doesn't usually happen because to wipe someone out takes someone. It's incredibly expensive. It's not an easy thing to do. And it opens you up to so much nonsense because if you're committing your armies to one section of the galaxy to wipe out a certain player, your own planets are wide open. Unless you got so far ahead, and even then, a couple of people could work together and take you out while you're trying to take someone else out. So it doesn't really happen. And it's also not really worth it. Like, there's no world domination victory. It's objectives, and it's victory points. And see, up until we started playing this with this particular group of friends, I had never even seen anyone get wiped out. Except the past few times we've played. Out of the past 3 times we've played, I've gotten wiped out twice. I mean, it's my own fault. And the one guy did have a private objective that was basically incentivized him to try and eliminate me. It sucked, but I still got to be there for the rest of the game, and there wasn't that much left of the game after that point, right? Unless you get screwed really early on, then, you can usually build up to the point where it's not even worth it to try and wipe someone out because it's just going to cost you so much. You might not even do it. Game length. Technically, officially, the game is meant to end in a concise period of time. Officially. There's a mechanic with the objective cards. You get a new objective card revealed every round, basically. And what you're supposed to do is in the phase 2 objectives, the higher victory point objectives, you're supposed to shuffle in one of these game over cards. And then whenever that's revealed, the game ends. What we generally do is not that. We don't use one of these game over cards, and we do first to 10 points. 10 points is the standard score cap. You can do the long game, which is 14 points, which we've not done, but there's also other things that you can use with these phase 2 objective cards that if you do something very specific, they're I win the game objectives. If you do something very specific, you just win outright. It doesn't matter where the points are. It doesn't matter any of that stuff. You just win. Our particular group isn't as much of a fan. It's not really our particular group. All of the rules that we used, all of the components that we used, that was determined by myself and my friend. And we're not really a fan of that stuff. If we're playing Twilight Imperium, we want to play to the end, but that does mean that the big climax of the game might be halfway through. The big fight between 2 or 3 armies, when big push for this or that, might be halfway through the game. Because then you wipe each other out, and then you got to slowly rebuild, and because the game just doesn't end. So, yeah, keep that in mind. The game over objectives are worth considering, just because they do keep the game length concise. More concise. It's still going to take hours, especially depending on player counts. Oh yeah, that's another thing. Twilight Imperium 3rd edition with the 2 expansions can go up to, 8 players? I've played with 7 once, And it was nuts. We didn't even, I think someone got 4 victory points before we called it. This was with the original group that I'd been playing this game with. So they were doing the objectives and stuff, sure, but they called it hard limit at like 2 a.m. and we started at like 6 p.m. something like that. So a good 8 hours, and it was nuts. It was fun, but it was bonkers. So yeah, the more players you got, it doesn't necessarily make the game better. 4 players has worked really well. 5 and 6 work pretty well. 5 is a bit tougher to balance for the map if you're trying to do a balanced map because it's non-standard. So what I end up using is an asymmetric map. Normally you have everyone's home systems are on the perimeter. Yeah. 7 players. It was a rough night. But it is flexible for that. You can do that. There's components for that, and you can do that. But yeah, I will say that so one thing that will be a boon if you want to try and actually play this game, take the time to figure it all out beforehand. What we like to do, I've got notes for the things that we use, the house rules that we use. There's a variant online you can find that we use a lot. We take a lot from Shattered Ascension, I think it's called. Shattered Ascension is the kind of house rule that we use, the house rule module. We use a lot from that, and that was done really well. But figuring out all that kind of stuff beforehand, very important. Figuring out the map beforehand can also be very important, so that it means when, what we like to do is I'll have him come over earlier, or if he's hosting, I'll show up early. We'll set up the table and set up the board before anyone else even shows up. So then by the time everyone shows up, we've got the board set up. What we might even do is set out, 2 races per player and let everyone know what your options are. And then when they show up, they can pick their race, and you don't have as much you got to take out of the box. That way you can already have that kind of stuff prepped. And then with all the little bits, you can organize everything and get out just what you need, set everything else aside, and then by the time people start showing up, everything's all ready. You don't have to wait, an hour for someone to set up the board. I will say the way the game usually suggests you build the board is kind of in real time with everyone there, where you're given a hand of tiles and you can you make the board as you go, and it does make it unbalanced because it's there's more random there, and that's interesting. I'd like to try that at some point, but we found it's just been a lot cleaner and that's my phone again, a lot cleaner to just have that all prepared beforehand. It works out a lot better. And it's less for people to learn as well. You don't have to learn, oh wait, how do I make the board? How is this going to work? Is this a good tile? Should I be trying to... It's less people have to learn. And we do there's a house rule that we do where we set up all of the starting locations, and then you bid. You bid on what starting location you want. Once you've chosen your race and you've gotten your seek objectives and that kind of stuff, you get to bid on your starting location. So there's some agency there, so you can see what the entire map looks like and choose where you want to go and how much it's worth to you to go there. We like doing that because it does, give you a bit more agency, and it's not just who's next to you as your neighbors. It's you choose your neighbors basically. yeah. Twilight Imperium, great game. We're going to try and get a 4th edition game in this summer. That is going to mean relearning the game because they did revamp a bunch of the rules. And what I'm going to attempt is having this as a series on the channel, because that is something that when I started this channel, one of the things I had thought about was most of the TI gameplay footage you find on YouTube is edited. It'll be cliff notes. Someone narrating what happened and showing clips or things like that. I want to... it is because the game is such an investment. See, my idea for the gameplay side of this was I wanted to be able to show people what it was like to play some of these games that we enjoy. I'll have a rules explanation video and a gameplay video so you can see what the game is like to play, maybe see if it's something you're interested in, and then watch this other video to learn how to play it or learn how to teach it. Something like that. And when I was looking into this, there wasn't a lot of well-done TI games that were just the entire game start to finish. Yes, I know there's a lot of downtime, but I still want to try and do a series where I record the entire game minus the setup, just the gameplay and stuff, so that people can see the discussions. And I even plan on having a camera set up in a side room so that if someone wants to go talk strategy, they can do that, and I can add that in after. And then what I plan on doing is release it in maybe 45-minute chunks, video a week. And I'm going to try that with 4th edition this summer. We'll see how that goes. So if that's something you might be interested in, look forward to that. Probably it'll be July when we get the game, when we meet up to play, and then with all the editing that's going to take, it might take a while until I even start releasing the videos. I'll probably want to get a couple of videos done ahead of time before I start releasing them to give myself time to do more editing, because it is going to be a lot of footage to go through and splice together. Hopefully I can make it work, because that is something that I've always wanted to try and do. So yeah, stay tuned for that eventually. In the meantime, Twilight Imperium is a great game. With 4th edition out now, you'll be able to find 3rd edition cheaper. And it is still considered one of the best board games, modern board games. So it is worth getting. But as with any game that takes a while and has that much to learn, keep in mind your audience. You need people dedicated to committing a lot of time to play that kind of game, and even just to learn it. And you're not even going to feel really comfortable playing it until maybe your 2nd or 3rd game of it. It's a big one. It is a great one, but it is a big one, and it's not going to be for everybody, and it's expensive. Though, if you do have a group that are interested in trying it, have them pitch in. Split the costs of it so that it's, if it's something that you're only going to be playing with a particular group of people, split the cost between them so that it's not all just on one person, and then, it's more likely you're going to be able to afford to try it. Anyway, I've rambled on about Twilight Imperium long enough. I am Tim from Welcome to the Table. You've been with me in my car while I ramble on my way to work. Thank you all for listening, and I'll see you all next time.